Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be making some Lauki squash relish. That's what you do when you have an abundance of Lauki squash. If you are not familiar with Lauki squash, they also are called calabash squash, sometimes called a bottle gourd. This is not too big. This is actually small. They would be as tall as I am if they're too big. So they do get really big, but they're great. You can cook them like you would a zucchini, or recipes that you would use with zucchini. Today I'm going to make relish, so it's a process to get to it. So we're going to do it in steps. Step one is just to cut it up, and I'm going to be peeling the Lauki squash because it can get a little bitter with your cooking. So I do peel it. Then I will cut it in half and get the middle part with the seeds out. Just scrape the middle part. So it's a lot of processing with the vegetables, but it's worth it in the end. This relish is really good. There are several other ways that you can eat the Lauki squash. I have made soup with it and used an emulsion blender and made the soup, which is really good. But we also like it if you cut the squash, if you have it like this and scoop the insides out and cut it into strips like you would for French fries, then salt and pepper it and lightly flour it and fry it like you would a French fry, and they're really good like that. So we'll get back with you in a little bit with the next step. Right now I'm just peeling the squash and cutting it and getting the middle out. See you in a little bit. Okay, what I'm doing now is I've just been feeding in the Lauki squash into the food processor, and I'm just shredding it. Get it all shredded. I've got one more little bit to put in here to finish my shredding. And when I make this, I make a big batch because it is a process of doing this. So I make a pretty good sized batch so that I'm making several. We sell it at the market. So I try to do a big batch at one time. So we're going to just take it out. Some of them won't do on the top for some reason. If they're a little bit small, I just put them over there. So we dump the shredded into the big bowl. As you can see, they're big, so they make a good batch. I just as far as my recipe goes, I've got my recipe is a really great recipe, but if I have a lot and I use more squash than it calls for, I just double up on the other things. So I've got my squash shredded, and we're gonna move over to the next place and show you what to do next. Okay, the next step I'm going to put is some salt over the shredded Lauki squash. I use canning and pickling salt because when you do that, it does not make anything cloudy when you're canning things. So that's what I like to use when I'm using my salt, or doing my canning. So you just sprinkle it over the top. The whole 1/4 of a cup. And the next step is I'm going to take it to the fridge, and it's going to stay in the fridge for 1 hour. Okay, while the Lauki, I say it wrong every time. I said it wrong for a long time, so it's hard for me. I mean, I'm Southern Alabama, and I say it wrong sometimes. But anyway, Lauki squash. While it's in the fridge for the hour, I'm going to get I've got some bell peppers here. They're pretty large, so I'm going to use 2 of the green ones and 1 red. That's pretty much for color. And I'm going to use 5 onions. So what I'm going to do while it's in the fridge is I'm going to cut these up and de-seed them, cut the onions up, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute, but I am going to just basically shred them like the squash was. So we'll get back with you after I've got these vegetables prepared. Okay, I've got the bell peppers and the onions all shredded up and mulched, and they're in the stock pot. My next step will be to add the apple cider vinegar. I'm going to add my sugar and my spices. I've got turmeric and celery seed in here. Then we're going to just stir this up. Not going to bring it to a boil yet, but I'm just going to stir it. We're still waiting on the Lauki. The Lauki's still in the fridge. So until the Lauki gets ready, we'll be back in a minute and I'll show you what to do with it. Well, the Lauki squash has been in the fridge for an hour. It has started to wilt a little bit. You can see, as you can see. Next step is to rinse off the salt and to squeeze out the water a little bit. Just adding the shredded squash to the onion and pepper mixture here with the seasonings. Well, now I'm just mixing the squash together with everything, and from here all you really have to do is just bring it to a boil. Once it's come to a boil, let it simmer, turn it down and let it simmer, or let it simmer for 4 or 5 minutes, and pretty much the relish is done then. The next step I would do is to can it because I want it to preserve it. But the relish will be done once it's heated through, and then you can just, if you're not going to can it like I'm going to do, then you would just put it in, let it cool to room temperature for it. They've got the water heating up, and I'm going to do just a water bath can on them just to help seal the jars. They will be in the water bath for 10 minutes. And then I'll have them canned. So when you're finished, this will be your finished product of the Lauki relish when you're done. Right now I'm still working on the last batch. This was the previous batch. But just so you know what it looks like, this is what it will look like when it's finished. Hope you enjoyed the video.